Hello and welcome to the next edition of BobCAD CAM's weekly training events. Today's topic is Bobart, and thank you for joining us today. All right, let's see here. What are we going to learn about? Today we're talking about working with images. This is really common. Uh, you get a customer's logo, or there's a PDF or an image you find online, and you want to be able to engrave it or do some pocketing, or maybe even some 3D machining. And using the Bobart add-on, this is a great way to expand the type of files you work with, add some more toolpath power, and give you the ability to design in 3D with STLs and components. And it's very, very useful as far as, just expanding the capabilities. Now, this is commonly used with a lot of the shape cutting markets, so plasma, laser, water jet, CNC routers, desktop routers, but it's also very popular with tool room type mills and things like that. You could be a job shop, you could be an OEM, you could remake other people's parts. And again, this is a great tool to have, and by far one of our most popular add-ins. I'm going to just take a short break here just to highlight our feature partner here. Melon Tool is a tool supplier that we've worked with for a number of years, testing out Toolpath and Toolpath technology to get you guys better results. A few years ago at IMTS, we did do a cutting demo, which is the wing file that you're seeing today. I hope to see you at IMTS this year. We will be presenting, so if you haven't booked your tickets, I highly recommend to do so now. And again, Melon Tool, one of the many tool providers that are out there, and just a partner that we work with to help provide you guys with better tools, whether it be in the shop or the garage. All right, so just a little plug for Melon. Thank you so much for your support. And then the last one here, if you guys have any Bobart questions moving forward, you can always give us a call, 877-262-2231. And make sure to talk to your account manager. We have different account managers based on where you're located, so get to know yours. All right, now let's go ahead and get right into it. The topics we're going to talk about has to do with working with images, positive and negative space, combining text and images, and move, copy, scale. How do you adjust files? Now, one of the things that I want to cover here is that there are a lot of images you can grab online. There's DXF libraries that you can purchase, and even STL files as well. And you can incorporate all of those into your design. It is helpful to utilize files that already exist, but one of the very popular features of the Bobart software is being able to import these image files and being able to convert them. Okay. When it comes to Toolpath, we are going to be talking about V carving. V carving is a kind of like router specific type toolpath that allows you to use chamfered or V-tip type cutters and getting a handcrafted or hand carved type look. But hopefully we'll be able to go over some 3D engraving as well, which is where you can just project your text down onto, or your lines or arcs down onto a surface or solid. And this is also a popular method in order to do engraving on different parts, or like in this example, this curved surface. Okay. The other thing we're going to talk about has to do with embossing, different embossing tools, and how to emboss from component. So those are the topics here today. And thank you so much for joining us. Now, again, if you guys have any questions, comments, or feedback, just reply to the comments section of wherever this video may be posted. Every question and comments. Questions are important, and feedback allows us to do a better job for you guys. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just kind of get into the CAM side of the software. So when we talk about Bobart, where would you find this? Now, Bobart is an add-in if you downloaded a demo, or you recently made a purchase, or the software was included with your machine. The functionality that you have available, that's not what I'm looking for. The functionality you have available is based on what's on your license. Now, Bobcat does offer perpetual licenses. These are expiring licenses. Essentially, they'll work as long as the software can be registered on that computer. And we do have a product life cycle that you can review. We support and maintain a handful of versions going back. So, among all the different add-ins that we have available, some of the newer ones is the 5-axis premium. We have our 3 premium. 4 Pro, we've made a bunch of improvements to and add-ons. We have our Bobart, which coming with 35, we're going to see a new workflow. And if you've seen some of the teaser videos on V10, you have an idea of what's coming there. And then the other one here that was recently added is the probing package. So this way you can program your probes within the Bobcat software. Now, here's the thing to know. These products are available across all of our product families. So that includes BobCAD CAM, which is the standalone software. It includes BobCAM for SolidWorks, which is an add-in for SolidWorks, and BobCAM for Rhino, which is an add-in for Rhino. As far as I know on the SolidWorks, it's 2017 and greater. And Rhino, I believe it's 6 and 7 is the versions that are supported. If you have any of those CAD packages, go ahead and download a demo. Just go to bobcad.com, go to the free demos tab, and you can just put your email address in there and be able to download a demo copy. All right, so again, to have access to the Bobart and to be able to utilize its functions, you need it to be on your license. If you don't have it currently, you can call your account manager, make your purchase, and they can add it to your license. Now, as far as where does Bobart show up, Bobart shows up in 2 main areas. One is the Bobart Tab. Okay, so this whole tab here, this is one of the docking panes, and it can be configured. This is your data entry, your CAD tree, your Bobart, and your CAM tree. Okay, so you can configure these. You can also move the Bobart tab to different locations. But what I want to talk about is sometimes you lose the docking panes or it goes away. So an easy way for you to refresh them is to go to your user profile. Okay, and you can reload a different user profile. To load it, you can just select it and double click it, and that will kind of change the layout of the screen. And then you can go back to your preferred profile, and then that way the screen is updated to the way that you want it configured. Okay, so if you lose your Bobart tab, that's how you get it back. Now, within the Bobart tab, this is where you can add in different files. Generally, when you're opening a file, you're going to go to File, Open, and then you'll choose Files of Type, and these are all your popular CAD files. Okay, now you can also drag and drop, so you could, because it's a Windows product, you could drag and drop files into the CAD space, and that works as well. But if you're working with an image, a JPEG, a bitmap, a GIF, TIFF, PNG, or other, you're going to want to go to the Bobart tab, and there's basically 3 types of files, but there's 2 main types. There's vector files, and then there's image files. So image files are pixel-based. Vector files can have some line and arc type data. If you're working with Photoshop, EPS, AI, and PDF, you get with are common exported files from those popular graphics packages, and you can import them and work with them. Now, here's the thing. Just because you can import an EPS, an AI, or a PDF doesn't mean that it's good geometry. It depends on the CAD preparation and how they prepared the file. Okay? All right, so that's how you get those files in there. The other area you have is images here. Okay, so if we go to Load Image, this will give you a number of different file formats that you can work with. Typically, I am generally using like the common ones, PNG, GIF, TIFF, that kind of stuff. But there are a number of different files. And if you work with a graphics company, you can let them know these are the files that are accepted, and then they could send you those files in that format. So this gives you a lot of flexibility with working with graphics files. But at the same time, there's a bunch of common ones that you'll generally work with. Okay. Really, again, to bring an image in, you can go to Images, Load Image. This is a right mouse click, so Images, right mouse click, Load Image. Go to a directory, pick the file of type, and then you can grab one of your files. Now, here's the thing. This is pixels, right? So essentially, one of the topics that we have here is converting images into something you can work with, right? So you can't machine a picture, but if you vectorize it, you can convert it from an image into lines and arcs. Okay, so now that you have those lines and arcs, you'll be able to machine it and edit and manipulate. Now, here's the thing: the untold truth, or the dirty little secret about DXF files. They have a lot of entities, and this one you can see. There's a bunch of different entities. When you're dealing with text and images, you get a lot of little tiny segments and things like that. All of those positions are saved in the background in a database, and the files can become laggy and difficult to work with. Now, here's the thing. Essentially, we're taking that image and we're using like an algorithm to connect the pixels, right? So if we look at this from the image point of view, these pixels here, there's an algorithm that's trying to find the center of that line and generate a curve through it. The quality of the image that you're working with has an impact of what you can return. And then also some of the settings within the vectorization. You can come in here and edit some of these settings. There's this accuracy and remove chains, and working with the quality of the image, you can do some adjustments here and improve what you get coming in. Now, generally, when you bring something in like this and you vectorize it, you're going to get a bunch of squigglies and things. So, be prepared to clean up the geometry. And again, the quality of the image can go a long way. That being said, if I just draw a 2x2 square here, right? I want to get this image inside of that square. So even, let's say you have a good quality image and you get a good chain, you're going to need to know how to move things around and to be able to make it bigger or smaller and scale it. So those are some of the other topics here where we want to take this and fit it inside of the box. Okay, so we can use utilities and translate, window pick our geometry. You'll notice that it will pick from center. This is a newer option in the last few versions, so it can find the center, or you could pick a position. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this point here, and then I'm going to let go. And as I move my mouse across the screen, I can drag it, right? Now, you can kind of see how it bumps around a little bit. That's because it's utilizing the snap points that are in the background. So what we want to do is go over to our snap grid here and make this a much larger number. I'm going to make it 1 inch and then enter. Okay, so now every time it moves over, that's a 1 inch increment. And I could use this to help me size up where I want it to go and to be able to move it around a part or a line, the center of this geometry to the center of another piece of geometry. Okay, so generally when I'm trying to move this stuff around, I'll either turn the snap grid off, which is just clicking the magnet icon here, and now it's in a full sketch mode. You can see it moves very smoothly. Okay, or I'll make this number larger so it makes it easier to position the part. Now, the other thing is if I just want to tell it where I want it to go, I should be able to just type in endpoint 0, 0, 0, and it should move it to center. Let me see, 0, 0, 0. Well, okay, so I have this endpoint position, so it's looking for a position. If I tell this 0, 0, 0, yeah, it's kind of, I'm layering too many things on at a time. Okay, so if that happens to you, the best thing to do is just stop, slow down, and look at what you're trying to do. I'm trying to move this from there to the center. Okay, so we're going to do translate, pick what we want. I'm going to window pick the geometry. From here, I can tell it 0, 0, 0, and it's going to go right to center. Okay, now as far as the size of it, I want to make it smaller. Okay, so I can use this scale factor. I can make this a smaller number and it shrinks. Okay, now notice how it shrunk away. So I could use this scale from center to have it shrink on center. All right, and then I can make this a bigger or a smaller number. The other thing I can do here is I can use this handle and I can drag this out. Okay, so I can make this bigger or smaller. Okay, and I think it may be picking up some of these snap points, right? So I'm just going to turn the snap off there, and I think that will give me a little more fine control. All right, so that's the size of it. We're going to say OK and cancel. All right, this additional geometry, this was from the vectorization. I'm going to window pick and delete. And now I have the geometry that I want to work with, okay? So that's just a quick example of bringing in an image, converting it, and moving it to position. If we wanted to machine this, again, we can just go over to our CAM tree, create a new job. Now, I highly recommend if you're running a laser, plasma, water jet, or even an email or a VMC, whatever the case might be, you may want to create a standard template job for engraving. Okay, and it's pretty easy to do. The first step that you would do would be to just set up a job like you normally would. Where all the magic happens is after you've set up the job, reminding yourself to save it as a template, which essentially makes it a new starting point. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and click OK on this job. We're going to run the stock wizard. All right, we're going to calculate from the space on the screen, and there's some artifact. There's a small piece of geometry here, so it's picking that up. A lot of times when I'm working with an art project, I'll use a boundary so I can just select that to contain the stock or to localize where I may be focusing on. Okay. All right, our zero position, again, this will vary on machine. I'm going to do top center here, and I just want to make the thickness of the material a little thinner here. So let's just make it, a 1/4 inch. All right. Top center looks fine. As far as this reference point here, this is something you can use to align the part with the virtual machine in the background or the twin, right? So what it does is positions the part on the virtual machine. If you're not running machine simulation, it's probably not an issue. Or if every time you run simulation, it looks like the tool's giving you a gouge, even though there's no gouge going on, likely there's a collision group set up. Okay, so either way, we move this to here. Now, I'm going to ask you guys, which toolpath would you use to machine this, right? Which one would you use? So if anybody has an idea, go ahead and fire away. It's kind of like a loaded question a little bit. And essentially, I'm trying to draw attention to the two different scenarios. You would machine this either with a profile feature. Typically, if you have some geometry and you want the tool to follow it, you could use a profile feature, something like a profile finish. Okay. And then within this profile finish, you could pick from the tool category and pick a different cutter, so we'll just grab, a V cutter here. And then because it's text or a logo or a pattern, we really don't want the tool to offset. So we would put it system comp off so we can run right on center and then adjust our parameters, how deep we're going to cut and then compute it. Well, you got to select your geometry. Select your geometry, compute it to get your tool path, and then post it to get your code, right? So now you got your code over here. But the thing is that I would not recommend using a profile feature for engraving. Sometimes you can get away with it, but the problem you'll have is with intersecting geometry. If you have geometry that intersects with itself, like think of the cross of a T and things like that, profile really gets kind of confused in those areas. And, even in this case, we can see a lot of up and down motion with the tool. Okay, so what I'm going to do is instead look at what our other option would be. Okay, so I could select this, like I'm doing here and kind of reselect it and start over. That's one of the workflows you could use. The other thing you could do is just copy with geometry and then paste. So what this does is keeps your selection and then you can go in and just adjust your strategy. So let's go with engraving. We're going to get rid of that. All right, the tool, again, we want to use that same tool. So we're going to just go to our tool category and pick the tool. We'll go ahead and compute this. All right, now as far as display of the toolpath, showing things, turning it on or off. Okay, so this option in the tree here makes it pretty easy to help with that. So you can just turn the visibility of things on or off. In this case, it really doesn't look like the engraving did much of a difference. It's got to pick up and go from one group to another as far as our retracts go. But where this will be more easily, where we'll be able to see the difference more easily is when we deal with text. Okay, so takeaway number one, if you have a feature, you already selected the geometry and you want to apply a different operation, right click, do copy with geometry, right click, paste, paste the new feature. And then based on that, you can capture some of the settings that were there. And then you have the ability to edit the operation. If you want to copy an operation, you can copy and paste an operation at the level. So this is the feature. Oh, let me close that. This is the feature. This is an operation. This is an operation. Again, so you can copy and paste. Sometimes this is helpful. You're trying to stage stock for finish and things like that. You can also select and delete. So I'm just going to select it and delete. Okay, more so I'm putting focus on the post yes, no here and the blank, unblank. So this just makes it easier to visualize what's going on. All right. What I want to do is make sure you know how to turn this option on. So this is under current settings. It's under user interface. Well, this is one, double click edit, which I like a lot. And then also from the CAM, this is extended. Initially, I thought I would want it on the left. I've decided I prefer it on the right. And I also prefer the icons. So again, just once you make these changes, you hit apply and it will show up in the tree. All right, so from here, we converted an image, we did some programming, I made some copies, I talked about some workflow to optimize some of this stuff here. I'm just going to delete this guy. Okay. What I want to do now is add some more geometry, and text is really popular, whether you're engraving, whether you're a plasma shop, whatever you're doing, working with text is super cool. So where do you get fonts for the system? Okay, so we can go to Create 2D and we can go to text here, and you have Windows and BobCAD. The Windows is TrueType fonts or open fonts, and you can go online and download a lot of these fonts for free. The Bobcat fonts are the ones that we include. Classic Bobcat users would know them as the AFN. And the most popular font is probably the Bobcat default, which is a stick font for just part numbering. Okay. You shape cutters, plasma, laser, waterjet. There are fonts, window fonts that are specific, or I shouldn't say specific, and the term is eluding me. But essentially, when you're dealing with drops and things like that, uh, the font has, I'm going to call them tabs or breaks built in. I can't think of the term off the top of my head. Built in, so you don't have to add them in later. Okay, and I highly recommend that you utilize some of those fonts, and you can just find them online. These are all, most of these just came installed with Windows. Some of them I've downloaded, and there's some really cool things that you can do with fonts and changing your font with a program. And I want to talk about that as well, but I am looking for stencil type fonts, and it doesn't look like I have any in here. So if I have time later, I'll show how to download. Oh, here's one right here. Perfect. BobCAD CAM. Okay, so the reason why these are really cool is because they have these tabs broken into them. So if it's a shape cutting application, it makes sense to use a font that has a break in it, but I can also show you how to add those back in by using 2D Boolean and things like that. Okay, I'm just going to place this on the screen. Now, keep in mind the same drag position and the snap points apply. So if you have those turned on, you can see how it will snap at 1-inch increments. Again, very useful. And then also these leader lines, you can utilize them as well in order to position. I'm going to turn the snap off. I'm just going to kind of go to here. We'll say okay. All right, so I want to go back to the CAM tree. This one I'm going to remove and remove. This one I'm going to reselect, pick the text, say okay, and compute. All right, so when we're dealing with this shape, this font here, again, the tabs are already built in, so this is great for plasma. You put an outside shape on it, it handles the drop really well. If you want to add tabs or you want to leave material behind, you can always come in here to tabs, and you can say add tab. We're going to do use manual method, edit. I'm not sure what that one is, but usually you can either pick on the the inside or the outside of the chain in order to edit. There's a bunch in here. We're gonna do. I don't know. There's a lot going on here. I'm not sure what chain ID I want to work with. So I can toggle through these. Let's go up to this one. I'm gonna say this chain, apply tab, use manual tab, edit. And I think it's that one. There we go. Okay, so if you're outside of the line, it will put the tab point location in. If you're on the inside of the line, it will take it off. So you could say go here. Oh, no, I don't want it there. Go here. All right, this is very useful. Once we add a tab location, we can say okay. I'm not sure why I'm getting that. But from here, we could come over and we can adjust the tab information. So I'm running into something here. So we're going to say apply tab. This we're going to make smaller. It's probably my values here. So this, I'm not sure. Apply. So, okay. Definitely failing. I'll come back to that. But essentially what you can do is pick the position and then it will leave material. What I'm recommending if it's shape cutting is to use a font that has it like a stencil font that's already in there. Okay. Let's go ahead and just make sure the tabs are turned off. We'll come back to that. And I'll work with a simpler piece of geometry to kind of get in there. Okay, this one, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to just select this and say okay, and then we're going to compute. All right, so we have two features. One is with a profile and one is with an engraving routine. And we can't really see much of a difference. Maybe, where it starts from, we still have the same start point control, right? So we could adjust that. So what we want to do now is we want to change the font. So we decide, we don't want to use that font. We want to use a different font. So we're going to go to select the font. Okay, we're going to right click and then go entity modify, and then we're going to choose a different font. We're going to go to the Bobcat default and we're going to say nope, we want this one. Let's see here. That is not the Bobcat default. This is how you can change. You can go to different fonts, right? But what I want to switch is to a Centerline font. Something to talk about here as well is sometimes these different little alphabets. You get a bunch of different characters that if you look up these alphabets, these can be very useful if you want like little engravings, like letter A is always a starburst or whatever. Another very useful tool. But what I want to do is switch this over to one of the AFNs, and I'm looking for a Centerline one. Okay, Centerline Fonts, here we go. This is what I'm looking for, and we'll say okay. All right, so the Centerline fonts, instead of going around the outside and the inside, it's just down the center. They're very basic stick type fonts, but what it does show is this intersection that I was talking about where you have lines that are open profiles but then intersect with each other. And these can be problematic for these toolpaths, right? For a profile toolpath. Let me update this. So I'm going to go to the feature, update geometry, go to the operation, recompute, and here we can see the toolpath there. Same thing with this one. I want to update the geometry. So I'm going to right click, update all geometry, go to the operation, recompute, and then we can see how they're updated. This may not be the best example for this, but again, trust me, I'm bringing the topic up on purpose because really, if you're engraving, you should be using the engraving feature, and where your consideration most has to do with intersecting geometry. Okay, and then your profile operation. Okay, you can utilize a profile operation, but it can run into some scenarios where it doesn't cut where you want. And actually, if you look at this example here, We can see that if you look at the top of the letter B here, we go to a top view. Top of the letter B here, it did not cut this section. It got all the way around this section, but it stopped there. So again, an indication that really you should have been using an engraving operation, which you can see picks up that area versus a profile operation. All right. All right. So those are the topics that I have there for really bringing an image in, converting it, moving it to position. We talked about jobs, and then again, we talked about job templates, right? So what I want to do is I've done this. I created an engraving feature. Okay, keep in mind that you want to go in here and maybe customize some of these settings. You have these flyouts here. Okay, and what these allow you to do is change your speeds and feeds. I think there's probably two different workflows here. One, maybe you set the tooling and speeds and feeds first, and then you apply the operation. The other one would be where you kind of set up the geometry and the operation in the toolpath settings, and then you go back and adjust for the specific tool that you might be using. Either scenario, when you're done with a project, you post the code and you're ready to run on the machine and it ran well. That's a process, and you should save that, store it, and reuse it. And that's where these CAM tree templates come in really helpful. What I'm going to do in this example is just kind of increase some of our numbers here. Okay, and I'm going to hit apply. All right, so you can see how if you make an adjustment to the feed rates here, that your calculator will update as far as cycle time. So this is very helpful. Actually, I'm not seeing it update there, so let me. It doesn't appear to be updating at this time, so I don't know if I need to compute it there. Let me see here. But you do have this cycle time. Yeah, okay, here 35. So if we set this to 50 and then apply, I may just need to leave the dialog and come back in to have it update, which is what it looks like there. Okay, so you can see by adjusting my cutting feed rate, I can see the time. All right, so I made some adjustments. I posted the program. Here's this code here. You guys need to understand that you can copy code out of here. So if you select code from this window, let me see. I don't know, it's blocked for some reason on me at the moment. Normally you can highlight through here. I'm not sure why. I think, okay, there we go. Yeah, I don't know, my select isn't working in this window. Normally you can select this, you can copy and paste out of there. So the point of that is if you're building a program, sometimes you're using an editor, you can post little bits and pieces of code and be able to stitch it together, which is very useful. I'm not sure why that's getting blocked for me, but trust me, it does work typically. Okay. All right. So we got our job set up. We picked our machine. We set our tooling. We have our zero position. We have our stock. We have a feature. We got some toolpath on the screen. We adjusted our feeds and speeds. We posted code. We ran the program. Everything is good. Now we want to use this same format, but we want to apply it to different geometry. So we're going to go to our job here and we're going to say save as job template. Okay, this is going to be Bobart 1, and then we'll say save. So it captured that process. All right. All right. So now what do we want to do from here? Well, essentially, we want to do the same thing we did on that other file we want to do on this file. Okay, so what am I going to do? Instead of starting from scratch and starting a new job, I'm going to do job from template. Okay, I'm going to pick Bobart 1 and say okay. And what you'll notice is that stock, the zero, the tool, even the speeds and feeds have all carried over. All right, so again, super helpful. All right, so that was just getting the job over there. Now what do we want to do? We want to move this geometry to center and make it smaller. So we're going to do utilities and translate, window pick this. All right, this is going to go to 0, 0. And then the scale, I'm going to do, not copy, scale from center, and let's make it 0.2. All right, and then we're going to say okay. All right, so we move that into position now. Now, what do we want to do? Maybe we want to add some text. So we'll say create 2D text. Just so you know, you can copy and paste text in here. If you have a Word doc or like there's a quote or something like that, you have all standard formatting, copy and paste code into there or text into there and be able to utilize it. And there's some special handling. So definitely something to be aware of. Again, I want to space this geometry. So right now I have my snap point really small. I'm going to make it a 1/4 inch, and then this will snap it every 1/4 inch. All right, I'll kind of move it into position here where I may want it. I can also adjust my base point here as well, so I could say exactly where I want it in X or Y. In this case, I can make the height of the font, larger or smaller. I can adjust the spacing between the letters. Sometimes you need them to be greater or smaller to be able to fit within the area that you're working with. Okay, so that puts my text there. I want to, in this example, I want to make the text taller. So there's a couple of ways you could do that. Right now, this is actual text. Okay, so if I right click on it and I go to Entity Modify, I can always come back and be able to change what that font is and information about that text. Okay, if we come over to here and I add a new layer, let's say I want to make adjustments, I want to scale it differently or edit it slightly. What I'm generally going to do is take the text and I'll copy it. All right, I'll turn off that initial layer and then I'll paste it. So what this allows you to do is to keep the text editing flexibility, but at the same time be able to explode the text. Okay, so by exploding the text, see how when I click on it, this is all selected with a single click. And then if I right click and I go to entity summary here, you're going to see font. Where does it show it? I'm not sure where it shows it right now, but it's definitely a font. Okay, so or text. There is a difference. So I want to explode it and break it down to its most simplest form of geometry. So that's going to be lines and arcs. Now you can break it yourself by going to Utilities and then Explode. All right. And again, if you're using and working with text often, okay, and you're using Explode all the time, you really should take a moment and adjust the toolbar so it better fits your needs. Okay, this is a very small icon, and it may be efforty for you to see it or to be able to click on it. And adjusting your toolbars is a pretty easy process to do. Let's go ahead and make an adjustment on that. So we're going to say, let's go customize ribbon. Okay, in here we have our different main menus. Those match these menus here. We're on utilities, so we would go to utilities. In the utilities, you can see these different groups: move, trim, extend, break, adjust, reorganize. Those are these different groups here. Okay. Within that button group, we can see our explode option. All right. So what we want to do is just make this large and then hit apply and then okay. So what we'll see now is under utilities, explode is a lot easier to see. And it's in a larger state. You can make it smaller or larger, and you can fully customize these ribbon bars. Now, those ribbon bars are written to a directory, and what I recommend you do if you edit your ribbon bar is copy I think it's an XML format, to like a backup directory. So that way you can play with editing the ribbon bar and then not lose the default. Okay. All right. Either way, we're going to explode this. We're going to click on this. Actually, I think I already did it. So let's do Control Z. Now this blue on orange is probably looking really bad. I'm sorry. So I want to turn the stock off. All right. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And the brown or orange here, I'm just going to make it black. That will probably be easier for you guys to view. So I want to change the color of it. I'm just going to selection mode, window pick, right click, entity attributes color. I'm going to make it black. Okay. So you can see how that's a single click now. All right. So it's still text. I want to explode it. So we'll go to Utilities, Explode. We'll click on this. We'll say OK, and then cancel. Now, when I created, when I took that CAD step, what it did is it used the current color, which happens to be orange, so it turned it orange again. All right, if I do a Control Z, I can undo that, and I can change this color from orange to black. And then if I do this again, and I select this, and OK, now you can see it's vectorized to black. All right, no big deal. All right, so what I want to do is I want to make the text taller than it is for the length. Now, in different art packages, it makes it really easy. It's like object-based design, so you have little nodes and you can pull it around. In BobCAD, you don't have the node editing unless if you're in a spline. But there are some tools that we have in here which is helpful. So the scale is pretty good. Again, we can pick all this geometry here. And this is similar to what we were doing before. The difference is we have non-uniform scaling. So maybe what you want it to do is stay the length, but you want to make it 2 inches taller. You can make some adjustments here. Let's make this. All right, so just an example of making the text taller. All right, I want to, so I have all of this on different layers. Again, something that you guys should be aware about in the layer section here is you can create a new group, okay? And then you can create layers under that group. All right, and this structure is very similar to the groups that are in the CAM tree, and then you can minimize that group. So that way you can have different attributes of your design, because layers end up getting filled up really quickly, and then you can hide it all in this group. And then as far as like moving things up or down, that's what these arrows are for, so you can move things up or down. All right. For us, what we want to do here is we'll take this original text, and then we're going to just move this over to one of these layers. All right, and then we can hide that layer so that way it doesn't go anywhere. And again, we can minimize the whole group so it gets it out of the way. All right, okay, so that's a little bit about that. Now, another thing I want to talk about is combining texts and how you, like a lot of, if you're going to burn this, again, you're dealing with drop. Okay, so we talked about making the letters bigger. You may want to do something like this where you have, okay, so my snaps are kind of getting in the way with me right now. So again, we can just turn those off or adjust that value. All right, I'm going to do this one here. And essentially from this side, I just want to make sure that I'm inside of the shape, and then I'll drag it over to that side there. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to combine these shapes or like add them together. You could just go through and trim it away like this. And unfortunately, a lot of us have done it this way or continue to do it this way. There really is a faster way to do this. So we're going to do Control Z, Control Z. Let me just undo what I did there. All right, well, first let's make sure it's across all the letters. So we'll start there. Let's grab this. We're going to go from here all the way across. Okay, and we want to combine these two shapes, similar to what we would do in 3D with a Boolean. Like in 3D, when we have two bodies, we can add, subtract, or intersect. Okay, so in 3D modeling, that's very common. In 2D, you have the same thing, add, subtract, or intersect. And essentially, it just makes it easier for combining or cutting shapes away. So I'm going to do an add in this example. All right, now, what I want to do is I just want to select the letters, but you can see that they're intersecting. So I'm going to shift click the first shape here, and then I'll window pick because you have an inverting selection. So I select what I don't want to select first, which was easy as a chain. And then I window pick and it inverts, okay? But essentially I got to pick the first group, which is that one. And then I have to click into this other window here, put focus. You can see how it changes focus. If I'm in this group, it's focused. Okay, change your focus to this group. We're gonna shift click on that chain. You can see we have a preview. We're gonna say okay. and cancel, and you can see how that connected everything there. Now, there's some drops, so I may want to come in and clean that up, and I can get rid of that very easily. Also, if you want to maybe chain or add some fillets, you know, again, some of these shapes are more complicated, and working with text, you get like these little tiny entities and stuff, and those can be problematic if you ever have heard of crop circles or zero. Like there's some tolerances with arcs, which by the way, your if you're working with a lot of this geometry, you definitely need to talk with the post team and talk about all the arc handling features we've added over the last couple of versions, as far as how we break arcs, how small, and just posts and line segments can really make a difference to your workflow for shape cutting applications. All right, what I want to talk about is just adding a fillet between here or there. This is a good example where you can see multiple entities, and by adding a fillet between here and there, like if we go from here to there, first off, it doesn't fit. So that's why it goes all the way over there, is it's trying to connect. So let's make this much smaller. Okay. You get the idea of the size of this, right? Okay, but when we do things like this, you can see we were able to fillet this one, but it lost this section here. These are some of the pitfalls that you have with working with text, so just something you need to be aware of. If we make this a little bit smaller, let's say we want to add fillets all the way around. Instead of picking them one by one, another option like where you pick the two entities. This is generally how we've done it in the past, is where you pick the two entities. The other option would be like a single corner click. So you just pick a corner and it will put one there. Again, sometimes you run into issues when you have these entities like this. Okay, so these are the types of things that you want to pay attention to. All right, and again, the takeaway here is you're combining these shapes. You want to add this strip down to the bottom. It's really easy to do that. Again, 2D. All right, I did a little trick with my inverting selection. So I select what I don't want and then select everything. It inverts. Go to the second group, select this one. Okay, and then we're able to trim that away and know that there may be some artifacts that we may want to clean up. Okay, all right, so that's a little bit, there's definitely a bunch more topics we can get into there. Again, if you didn't have a stencil, you could use this. If you didn't have a stencil font, you could use this workflow to add tabs to handle drop. But for us, we have our artwork done. The only thing we might want to do is trim some of this stuff away so that it doesn't go up into the BobCAD. So you might do something like align parallel, go from here, down a certain amount. Let's go with less than that. All right. And then, I want to trim these together. So you might do something like string. If you went like this, like that, you end up losing everything across that side. Okay. So string wouldn't necessarily work in that option. You could just do quick trim, and come across and break some of this stuff. Again, these smaller entities really can be problematic. So you do have to take your time when you're doing this type of stuff. Where you can use that 2D Boolean, I recommend you do so to the best of your ability. For me, I'm just kind of working my way in, and I'll kind of get as much of that I can get. And then again, I can kind of do like, all right, let's select all of this stuff, but I want to keep that line, delete type workflow. Let's select all of this stuff, and then now I just want to kind of close off. This one I can shift, left click, select that and delete. Okay, and I want to trim away, you might do a break many here in order to break this stuff. So quick trim, I'm going to do boom, 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 boom. There we go. Looks pretty good. Now, there are some other editing tools that you can use as far as like adjusting or modifying your images that you should be aware of. If I wanted this end to go out a little bit further, I could select that and say minus a 1/4 inch and get that to tab out. That's kind of an easy way to do that. Select this side here and just tell it to go a 1/4 inch, okay, and be able to have things go that direction. All right, so again, just making adjustments to the design. The other one that you have here is this drag corner. You can use this to kind of like adjust the box, okay? The two entities that are connected, you can use it to kind of stylize your image a little bit without having to do all the offset, and trim type stuff. So that one's pretty good. And then the other one here is deform. Deform will take like lines and arcs and kind of stretch them and bow them. Okay, and that can be helpful in order to make some adjustments. All right, so we've done some design work now. Let's go ahead and get back into the tree. Again, we have our 0 set up. We have our stock set up. What if we want to expand the stock area? Because stock changes a lot, right? So we can just run the stock and do rectangular, right? We can go to this one and calculate. You can see how that will break that out. And again, you can, not Z, but you can make some adjustments in X or Y or in either direction as positive or negative to adjust the stock. Stock is generally used for simulation. Stock is generally used for simulation, but in some of the other toolpath strategies, you use it as a toolpath containment. All right, so I want to update my geometry. I just go ahead and window pick everything and say OK. And then we compute. So that's the updated design, and then post it. Boom, there we go. All right, let's go ahead and do another example. So let's go ahead and open. Bear with me a second here. All right, let's go to a different one. All right, so we have this example here. Okay, so something I do as well is I'll use, like if I'm going to edit geometry, sometimes what I'll do is I'll take something, Control C, copy it, go to a new file, paste it, okay, make it bigger, smaller, make adjustments, and then push it back to the other file. I kind of like a clean slate a lot of times. So, all right, so we get this going on here. Again, we want to load our template. So we're going to load our template. And you can see where the material is. From here, I'm going to go ahead and select my geometry. Even if the stock isn't updated, right, you can still go ahead and compute and post. The stock more so is for the simulation, right? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at that. You guys have different reporting tools as well. You can see setup sheets and all kinds of stuff, but we're not going to get into that right now. Right now, this is simulating our job here. So let's go ahead and run this through. You have different tools you can use to adjust what display you're showing. I'm kind of moving this stuff over. I don't know. I guess once you launch the simulation, it looks like the status of those. There we go. It won't just close on its own. It wasn't just closing. Okay. All right. So this is just some of the simulation here. I kind of wanted to talk about the toolpath. You can use different stuff to show the tool number, etc. Okay. All right. So that's a little bit about working with images, the templates, etc. Let's get into a little more vectorization. So let's go ahead and go to a new file here. Let's go to Bobart. We're going to do load image. All right, here's a Florida silhouette. Okay, when a lot of times if you're going to go online, you can go online and grab images and be able to use them, right? So you got to be careful as far as what you do with it or whatnot. But you load the image in through here. I'm pretty sure you can load multiple images as well. Let's go with something like that. Okay, so you can load multiple images at a time. All right, and then you can do your vectorization. Okay, so you could go to this one here. You can vectorize it, and you can edit, and this is the raster to vector window that comes up. So you will notice a multicolor strategy. I generally want high contrast images. So if you have multicolor, you're really only looking at 3 or 4. And essentially what it would allow you to do is to pick different colors separately, just a certain color to target. In our case, we're going to just look at the 2 level. This threshold value, it's really just noise in the image. I don't know, there's a technical definition for this, like what it's doing. But essentially, when you bring in that image, you can use the threshold value to adjust what would be vectorized. Another useful feature with the vectorization, which generally I do the scaling afterwards, you can adjust like the result that you would get here. Okay, so the image size, you can adjust the scale for the vectorization. Okay, so see how I was able to make it smaller. Again, you can have multiple images in here. Be able to vectorize it, adjust your threshold value. You can see all the way one way, you don't see anything, all the way the other way, you don't see anything. And then as you move over, you'll see noise, and it's the way the image is displayed. There's a more technical answer for it, but essentially I kind of get this where it looks like something that's usable, and then I move forward from there. This one is the grill. Again, vectorization. Things that have a lot of detail like this can be very hard to get a good quality image from. So again, you can kind of hide that sometimes with the size of the image. You can see here we have all our different vectorization. My assumption is this is probably all on one layer. So let's get the layer back up. Let's pin it. Okay, let's move this over. Let's do insert new group 1. Add layer, add layer, add layer. Okay. This one here, let's see, we're gonna go to layer 1, edit, vectorize. Okay. This one we're gonna go to layer 2, edit, vectorize. Okay. This one we're gonna go to layer 3. I believe this works like this. Edit, vectorize. Okay. So now we should be able to turn each of them on or off. As far as display of the images, you can hit I on your keyboard and you can turn the display of those on or off. And then now we can look at each of these different components separately by using that workflow in order to adjust things. All right, I think that's about all on vectorization right now. Let's see, working with pictures. Go from picture to a sketch with lines or arcs. And again, that's done with Bobart. Load in the image and then using vectorization. Let's see, going from a sketch to 2D or 3D engraving. So all these examples here I'm showing are 2D examples. Keep in mind you can project that. Sorry, well, internal communication. You can take this geometry, and you can project it down onto different surfaces. And that was kind of one of the things that we have here in the melon example. Let me close some of this stuff out. In the melon example here, we've converted an image, and then so we have our logo, right? And we have their logo, and you can see how it's on this curved surface. So we want to engrave on this curved surface. So, which toolpath would you use for that? Bear with me just one moment. Jeff, Marshall, support. Excuse me. Okay, so you can take your logos, you can convert them into text, then you can engrave in 2D. You can also take that text and be able to project it down onto a surface. Okay, so if we look at this example here, this 3D engraving, essentially what is that? So this is where you're using 3D entities and just converting them to Toolpath. Okay, so you'll find this in the CAM tree when you go in here. You're going to see this 3-axis wireframe. 3-axis wireframe, we don't offset for the tool. We don't do any compensation. Essentially, we take your geometry and then we convert it to code. Okay, so we have our example here. What I'm going to do is window pick this. All right, I'm going to do a new file. I'm going to paste it. All right, so this gives us our text. Now, what I want to do is I want to draw a curve profile and extrude it so I have a surface to project it down onto. So we're going to go to our UCS. We're going to go to a side view. Okay, I want to look down on that UCS like from above. So if I hit Control 1, this is a top view to the world coordinate system. If you use this icon down here, active to UCS, you make this active, okay, and you hit Control 1. Now I'm in a top view or a front view for that side plane. This is a very useful feature, and it's going to change your workflow in Bobcat, especially if you deal with different sides of the parts. Okay, so we'll talk about using views to active UCS more, but essentially right now I'm just going to draw a profile. An easy way to do this would be something like a spline. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of draw some points here. Okay, now you have some different spline types. Image tracing, I use splines a lot. I don't have time to get into it today, but splines can be very useful. So I definitely recommend you look at that a bit. What I want to do is probably something more like this is fine. Okay, so this gives me a curved surface. Keep in mind, if you have a spline and you want to edit it, it works the same way. Select it, entity modify, and then you can drag these control points out in order to adjust your surface. Okay, so kind of useful feature there. Just kind of get a curve profile. Doesn't really matter so much right at the moment. All right, so we have that. Let's do our extrude curve here, and we'll just do 5 and 5. We just want to make sure it extends past the text on either side. Go to our UCS here and go back to our top uh, and look at this from above. I'm going to turn the shading off. S on your keyboard is for shading. Okay. Now, again, if you want to take a design and you want to make copies, you can use translate and copies. So utilities, translate. You can select what you want to work with. Again, you have select deselect mode, so you can get rid of geometry if it got caught in the interface. You got copies here, or caught in the initial selection. Yeah, copies here, so you can tell how many copies you want. And then again, you can use this drag handle. You'll get a preview so you can see what's going on. We're going to just say 1. Okay, so that way you can make a copy of that. All right, now again, what I want to do is I want to take this text and get it onto that surface for engraving. Okay, so we're going to do a new layer. Anytime I'm like working with surfaces and I have wireframe, I like them on different layers. Okay, I'm going to use a CAD feature called project. Let's go ahead and hide this. If you don't like layers and you want to hide things, you can use the blank and unblank options so you don't have to create any layers. For us here, we want to get this text onto that surface. So we're going to do, I think it's 2D project curves, Control 1 for a top view, window pick. All right, so that's what we want to do. And then this one here is where I pick my surface. Okay, we should see some kind of preview. There's some additional options that you have in order to adjust the project. And I probably should go through this some more. We definitely have adjusted some things. This is not a good use case to go through all of them, or at least I don't think it is. Or I hadn't put any thought into it, to be honest. But there is some cool things that they did with projections, especially curve on curve projections. So there's some new stuff in there that we'll explore more. with our weekly webinar training, right? But for this example, we're going to just take that. Everything looks good. We're going to say OK. And essentially what that does is it takes that text and it puts it onto that curved surface, okay? So now that it's on that curved surface, we could, convert it to G code essentially. And that's what that what the 3D engrave allows you to do. So we could still do job from template and run this through. This still has our stock and everything set up. In this case, I'm going to just do normally I like to draw them kind of as a solid. I'm curious of what it will do with just that surface. It does look like it just converted that. We want to go from a 2-axis feature to this 3-axis one, 3-axis wireframe. We're going to select geometry. So for me, I didn't do all the magic to put it on its own layer and stuff. So I'm just going to go to a side view. I'm going to turn my selection mask for the solid off. And I'll just window pick this area, and that will select just the text without selecting the surface. We'll say OK on that. From here, we're going to just pick our tool. We're using the same tool, so we'll go to that chamfer tool. Oh, I don't know why there isn't one in there. It should be. Let's just grab one of these. We'll say OK. All right, so there's kind of some cool things here. You have cut to geometry. You have cut from geometry. So if you're saying cut to geometry, that means you have the geometry at the Z level you want it to stop at. If you're saying cut from geometry, it's going to cut from the Z position the geometry is in and then step down. Okay. We're going to say cut from geometry. We're going to say 1 step, 0 distance because we have it where we want. And we'll hit compute. And that will convert all that geometry into Toolpath. Sometimes you want to stepping down in Z, and that's where these parameters are available. So you could say 2 step downs at a certain amount, and the cut to and cut from is either whether it let's go like this, whether it cuts down from where it's located, cut from, or cuts to where the geometry is located. So we projected it down on the surface and we say we want to step down in Z. One way is coming from above. The other is we projected it onto the surface and we want it to step further down in Z. So again, you can adjust that from here. And you can use this copy with geometry with all your features, right? Copy with geometry. You can paste, come in here, change one parameter at a time, recompute, so you can see the difference, right? You can say, all right, let's turn everything off. All right, this one is going down from the surface, right? And this one, or do I have them both set to the same? This one's going down. This one is going above, right? So it starts from above and goes down to the depth. This one starts from the depth and goes down from there. The only thing about this one here, is we're not comping for the cutter. All right. So this is not a works in all scenario. Because, if we simulate what this looks like, I mean, it's going to look pretty bad. Number one, because we don't have a sharp bottom cutter. Number one. Okay. And number two, you can see how it's not compensating for the cutter in any way. It's just driving from the center of the tool. If you're going to do this, maybe instead of a chamfer tool, maybe just going with a good old ball mill might be a good way to go. A smaller ball mill. I just need corner radius. All right, well, we'll go with a larger one to begin with. Okay, again, to exemplify how the center, or in this case, the tip of this tool is driving to that. So look at all this area, all this, different sides of the tool that it would be colliding, because 3D Engrave has no compensation. We can kind of drop our tool size down a little bit, so you can kind of see the difference there. We don't really have, like this one, we would have had to already machine it. So what I'll do real quick is load a 3-axis routine for the model here. I'm going to do just the planar. With something like this. All right, so that way we get some toolpath to finish that, right? And I'm gonna adjust my stock wizard. Again, I wanna use rectangular so I can kind of show we've already machined out some material, right? As far as posting order, there are some big changes coming to posting order, just to be heads up. We're adding an operation tree, which, the goal is to make more flexibility and easier to post out your operations. But in the current version here, we would go to machining order, and this is going to be the order of our operations. So I actually want the advanced planar first, and then I'm not sure which one it is, 1 or 2. So let's see. It's not this one, so we'll turn that one off. It is this one. So if we backplot this, right? Okay. And this one here. So even though these are in a different order in the tree, you can turn operations on or off, and then you can utilize machining order to say which order they're going to cut in. All right. This engrave I want to turn off. So I really just wanted to do this one and this one. My general workflow, like how I like to do it, usually is by individual feature as a default. And you can default this to individual feature. And the reason why I do that is I like to see the order in the tree. The order the items are in the tree is the order that I want it to work in, right? So if I want to change the order, you can see this is the ball mill rough. I can just drag and drop to change the order and then post. And then now you can see it's doing the engraving first, right? So I like that workflow, but a lot of times you have a lot of operations. So you kind of have this, well, do I have it in the tree or do I have it in the operate or the machining order? When you do it by individual feature, it will structure it in that order there. But then the other thing you can do is you can optimize it by tool per setup or optimize it by individual tool. So you got to have a tool changer. This is like a knee mill, VMC, HMC, multi-vice, multi-operation type thing. Just in shape cutting, you're not going to need to worry about that so much. So a plasma, laser, water jet, router guy. Router guys, maybe, again, depending on your parts. Your parts dictate everything. The type of work that you're trying to do really determines what product configuration you need to best meet your needs. All right, so here, okay, it's in the wrong order because I was messing around with that. So let's go this down. Okay, simulation. All right. All right, so I'm going to do next stop to get through that one. I just want to turn the toolpath off. All right, and we're going to press play. And here you can see the tool following that geometry along that surface, but not necessarily giving us the result that we're after because the tool's too big and it's not compensated. Now, that doesn't mean we can't get great results. I mean, in the melon example, but what it does mean is you have to pay attention to your tooling, and how you might use your tooling. Now, you do have some options as well with Toolpath. So if you're like a mill professional user, instead of using 3-axis wireframe like you would as a mill standard user, in mill professional, we do have a projection toolpath. Okay, so in here you have this one, and there's a lot of different ways that you can use this, but the biggest takeaway would be that it compensates for the cutter. So as you get to near vertical walls, you could utilize this toolpath in order to machine geometry along curved surfaces, but at the same time having the tool compensated for the surface. So what does that mean, that it's compensated for the surface? That it looks at more than just the tip of the cutter, and it will not violate the surface with your cutter. Well, if it's not violating the surface with your cutter, how do you get anything cut into the material? And that's where you can use a negative allowance in order to adjust where it's cutting to. So you might say something like minus some value. When we recompute this, you can see it's dropped down into the surface. We're going to just turn that one off. That looks good. We'll run this through a simulation. All right, you guys are doing a great job. We got about an hour and 20 minutes in. Hopefully I'm not water hosing you too much, but I think that the features we're talking about here today are useful in a variety of examples. Probably not the, my tooling is probably too big here still, so this may or may not be showing what we're looking for here. We'll see if, let's get rid of that guy. Let's see what we can do with our tooling. There's barrel tools. You know, this is like the really expensive cutters and 5-axis stuff. A lot of aerospace tool design, that kind of stuff is pretty good. We don't have an exact T cutter, or I'm sorry, chamfer cutter in here. You know, so we could create a form cutter to simulate a chamfer cutter. If I add in from library here, you'll notice this custom geometry option, tool geometry. So you could draw a form profile and be able to, so you can simulate that form profile. But in our example, really all we're going to do is just 0.0325. Close enough. Just going to drop the tool size down. All right, so when I do that, right, I get into this tolerance error. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to use a smaller tool. That will allow me to machine this, but by doing so, I run into this tolerance area, this tolerance issue, where I can't offset negative greater than a logic set for the cutter, right? So as far as a percentage or what have you, I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller and recompute. That should fit into the range. And then when we run this through, we should see something better. Okay, now I do want to get into V carving. I'm going to touch on that real quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the V carving because I really want to get into more of the embossed modeling with the time we have left today, and some of the cool things that you can do. Because if you got an email about this event, you saw that really what's possible with Bobart, and the image that was in there. Yeah, this is tough to see because of the resolution and the tolerances. There should be a auto quality improvement. So what you can do is kind of position the part. You can kind of zoom into an area. And then usually when you stop moving for a minute, it will run the improvement so you can see what's going on, right? So again, not perfect, but you can see how it's cutting into the surface as we expected. And comping for the cutter. So project curves versus 3-axis wireframe, some takeaways there. All right, now, okay, so we talked about going from a picture to lines or arcs. We talked about going from a sketch 2D to a 3D sketch, and how to use 3-axis engraving. The next thing is to go from a sketch to a 3D emboss model. All right, but before I get into that, I want to talk about V carving Okay, so we're going to do a new file here. We're going to just set up a basic job here, Mach 3 maybe. Maybe on your home machine or your garage machine. You want to get in and do some plaques and logos and things like that. You are going to find V Carve under the cam tree. You're going to find it in this lower range here. Okay, so mill V Carve. This is a toolpath. So when you get Bobart, you not only get the image conversions that we've shown, you also get this specific toolpath. If you want V carving, tapered pocketing, or V carving, you would need to have the Bobart license. You can, pocket and then use a V tool to clean it up, or you could just machine with the V tool, and a number of different things that you could do there. All right, so let's go ahead and open another file here. Let's go back to the America one. All right. So you notice how I opened the file and it was separate from the file that I was in. Another way you can do this is if you want to merge a file, you could also do file merge. All right. And then what that will do is import that geometry into your file. So file open opens the file. You can open a file and copy and paste, but you can also use file merge in order to just bring in the geometry, which I find to be useful. All right, so here's our geometry. Now, what could, before we get into V carving, what could we do with this? We could just do our engraving like we did before, right? So we could select this, window pick it, give it our depth. Again, with window pick, make sure you got clean geometry. Clean geometry is contiguous, non gaps. It will chain, not double entities, things like that. Let's go to here, go to one of these. This is fine. Okay, so we could take that, just engrave it. This one, I don't have this post, so maybe I need to use a different one, but if you want to change your post, you can go through and select what you want. I'll just go to 3-axis here. All right, we have our code. Okay, now this is what I was trying to show you earlier. You can come in here and go, you can select this and then do Control C to copy. And then in Notepad, you can paste it. Okay, so you can copy and paste code out of the NC editor. Here we have an engraving routine, so the tool is just going to follow it. Again, if you want to change where the tool starts, you can go to modify start point. It's going to pick up the midpoints. You could also change the direction that it's cutting in just by adjusting those arrows. If you want to control the order for engraving, I'm not sure. Profiling, I know I can pick the order. So let's try it here. We're going to go ahead and just chain select the letters by holding Shift, and we're picking them in the order we want them to cut in. Like that. And we'll say OK, and then compute. And then you can see how by, let's get rid of the holder and the arbor, and let's make this transparent. You can see by picking them in the order that you want them to cut in, it will cut in that order. Okay, so that's pretty cool. What are some other things? Sometimes, you want to add details and stuff, so let's kind of blank that out. And maybe what we want to do is add like a pattern. So I've always just used hatching. I just find hatching to be very easy. So let's see, where do we have it now? So we're going to go utilities. Okay, evaluate. So evaluate this crosshatch. Okay, this is just a really easy way to select the shape and to add some details to it. All right, so you can see we added this cross hatching. And again, we could come in here and remove and reselect. I'm going to just select everything again. I talked about dirty geometry. So does Bobcat have any tools to clean up dirty geometry? And it does. Ones that you should be aware of is under utilities, you have cleanup and optimize. And what this will do is get rid of any of the double entities lines that are on lines or arcs that are on arcs. So that's pretty useful for that. There are some other tools here: make arcs tangential and erase doubles. Cleanup and optimize kind of does a number of different things, so I generally use this one. But when working with images and things in the vectorization process, sometimes it can be very helpful to utilize make arcs tangential to update your geometry, okay, and to clean it up. But the main focus here would be clean up and optimize. All right, again, we talked about using hatching in order to add some patterns into the work there. Let's see here. Okay, so we talked about that. I want to get into V Carve. V Carve essentially is a pocketing routine or a profiling routine. You could select just a single letter. This is not going to work for your shape cutting applications. This is going to be more so like a router or on a mill. I have my material way up high. Let's go ahead and adjust that. Calculate. Next. Okay. Update. Compute. It's top of job is set up high here. Top of feature 0. This is going to be, let's go 1/4 inch. All right, so you notice how, let me go to control 1. I'm going to do arrow away. You'll notice how, even though I set it to 1/4 inch, it doesn't go all the way down. Essentially, what's happening here is we're using this V cutter, and it's calculating the center. The width of the geometry you select determines the depth. Okay, so essentially it's going to go and come up in these corners and do a cleanup. You can see the bottom of it. We weren't quite at the total bottom or what have you, but it does a little cleanup move there. And again, you can use this for lettering. It's actually pretty easy to use, and it does create a good result. This is just an example of V Carve lettering, right, where we're using the tool to cut that into the letter. Unlike a pocket routine, the tool is going to try to round over and the depth would be the same. Using V Carve, the tool will climb up the corners, give you a sharp chiseled work or a sharp chiseled look, and you can do some really cool things. So in this case, I did the letters there. Let me go ahead and get this into position where it will simulate on the machine. All right, so it kind of does those little spike moves, and then it's kind of going back and cleaning it up. I want to try to avoid, again, depending on the machine, I want to try to avoid, having the tool go up or down. I want to get as much of it as I can. Let me recompute that. Oh no, I don't know why that one was up high. So what I'm going to do is adjust the depth, essentially by making this a greater depth. I can recompute that. Usually that will get rid of some of the stuff that's at the bottom, but there may also be a depth of cut setting here. Okay, V depth of cut. So essentially, it can only go so deep because it's a 45, so it's going to intersect, right? But you kind of don't want it to do a bunch of, or you do or don't. If we make this a smaller number, what's going to happen is it's going to take more passes to get down to the bottom. So if you have depending on the machine and what it's capable of doing, it may not be able to take that at a full pass. So you can adjust this value down in order to adjust its step down, right? So if we go to simulation again, all right, and we play this through, you can see how it's stepping down based on that depth of cut and working its way into those letters. All right. Now, if you can help it, you kind of want it to just do all that in one pass, to eliminate all the back and forth and up and down and stuff like that. Okay, so how you handle that is you can control how deep it's going to go under the taper, right? It's a 45 taper, so it's going to end and intersect at a point, but you can make it short than that. So it can have a flat bottom and a 45 wall based on a depth value. So I could make this, maybe 125. Okay, and what you'll see, I believe, is that it will adjust where that's going to go. It didn't look like it made a difference there. Let's recompute that one. I can't really tell. Let me go here, but that's my understanding is that you can have it cut shallower. At this point, it's going deeper than I want. Let's make this 0.1. And I'm flattening it off. And it's not really clear to me. I think I need to be in a different range, but yes, 0.05. Let's match these two, 0.05. We should see how it's changing the floor, where the floor of the pocket is, right? So let's make this one 0.03. And we'll leave the other one the same. You can see how it's moving this up or down. So you can control the depth of that pocket. Now, when you end up doing that, what happens is it'll give you a nice wall finish, but you're going to have a bunch of material being removed with that V cutter, right? And that V cutter, I mean, it does a good job, but it's probably not as efficient as if you could use an end mill to go clean out the pocket and use the V Carve to come back and clean up the wall. Okay, so that's why you see two different operations here. Now, my point is depending on your machine, you can just plow through it in the wood, right? You could just use the V Carve toolpath with a single depth of cut to get to where you need to be. If you have a tool changer, you may find that it's easier to utilize like an end mill first and then come back and do the finishing. And that's what this pocket routine is all about. So you could use a pocket tool path to begin with. Let's make it 0.1. Okay. So you could use a pocketing toolpath to begin with. Now, again, I got to get within the size of the geometry. So I'm just dropping tool sizes down. So you can see how the end mill is kind of getting in there and cleaning up the floor as I go down in tool size. Right? You can see how that will go in and clean up the floor. And then I want this to come in and clean up the wall. All right. Let's go ahead and run that through. Okay, so we're gonna slow it down. I'm gonna turn that off. So now it's pocketing with the end mill first, giving you a nice clean floor, and then it will come back with the V tool in order to clean up that wall and put that I want to say like beveled edge, what you might call it. There's some different settings in there that you can use to adjust this. This ghost thing, I don't know what's going on right there. Maybe it's this other operation. I think it's because I had the stock up real high. Yeah, that's what that is. So let's go ahead and turn that one off. All right, so that's your V Carve pocket. There's your V tool for the wall, right? And we did that with that example. This one here, we want to go ahead and delete this. Okay, so now what do we want to do? We want to create a template, right? So we're going to right click on the job. We're going to go down to save job as template. This is going to be V Carve, right? Okay, so now we're going to go to a new file. All right, we're going to do, let's open up one of these. Let me see here. Let's go with this one, right? Home of the brave. Okay, so here's our file. Let's load in our job. Okay, so we're going to do job from template. You can click the little icon here. And by the way, if you're watching this video and you'd like to see these icons right here be larger, go ahead and comment in that video. If you like the way they are, comment that as well. If you have no opinion, comment you have no opinion. All right, so we're going to go here. We're going to do V Carve. Okay. All right, we look at our stock here. You can see the stock is over here. Now, something you often see me do is moving the stock to the part, or I'm sorry, moving the part to the stock, the 0 position. It's not necessary. I recommend doing that until you gain a higher level of confidence, but it's not necessary. You could just run the stock wizard on the geometry that's there. Use calculate. Okay, so it picks up the min max. We're going to do next. This is set in that same 0 position, so this would be the top bottom corner. But again, you could 0 wherever you want. I'm going to add a reference position for the bottom of the part here. Okay, from here, I'm going to select some geometry. And let's go with this section here. And I want to avoid these areas here and there and there. So essentially V carving between those. We're going to say OK. We'll compute this one, and that gives us that toolpath. And then we'll compute this one, and that gives us that one. We'll go ahead and post our program. There you go. If you want to combine different areas, maybe at different depths, right? What you can do is just copy your feature, paste it. Okay, so I'm going to use the same depth values initially. And essentially, I'm going to select another area of the part, which is going to be this area here. Okay. From there, I want to take a look at my feature settings. So, this one, maybe actually I want it to be 0.2. And then 0.2. And this one we'll do 0.2. All right, and compute. All right, so what that will do is use the smaller tool to come in there and clean up the pocket. And then it will use the larger tool to come in and machine the walls. Now, what I want to do is I want to change the tool size. So I'm going to come in here because I can get away with a larger cutter, and I'll bump up the tool size and recompute. All right, now what you're going to see here is this is like where material is left over. So it's coming back and cleaning up that corner. And there's some options in here. This is the cleanup amount. So you can make this number smaller or greater. And that is going to adjust how much that cleanup is doing in that corner where the end mill, the ball end mill left material there. Okay, and again, you can do this at different depths. For another section, we're going to just copy and paste. Maybe we don't want to use the V Carve part of it. So we're going to, this is holding shift, right? So we're holding shift. So we're going to do this section. That looks good. We're going to make this 0.1. All right, I don't want to do the pocketing. It's not going to fit there, so I can highlight it and delete it. It goes away. I can click this one and compute. Now that section is done. And again, it's repeating. You can just keep doing different things, right? So it really makes it pretty easy to iterate your design, make adjustments. At CAM tree templates, we can template different default settings. Maybe in here, you have the option to say use none, use vtool. These values here, you can default what these values are by saving your defaults. You can make an adjustment, choose save default. You can do it to the existing template, which I'm using system default, or I could create a new template just for V carving. Okay, so very, very useful there. Let me see if there's anything else I want to talk about there. You guys have any questions, go ahead and fire away. Let me see here. Positive and negative space on our letters here. Again, this is whether it's got an outside boundary or an inside boundary. I believe I covered that. If there's any questions about positive or negative space with images or text, go ahead and fire away. Combining text and images, we talked about 2D combined, so that looks pretty good. Move, copy, scale. We talked about move, copy, and scale. So unless you guys have any questions about that, go ahead and let me know. You can V Carve letters, you can V Carve shapes, and you have roughing and finishing. So now we are on to the final part of today's webinar on Bobart, and this is the embossing part. Now, there's a ton of features in embossing, and I could probably spend another hour or two going through it. And I think I want to talk about the impact or the easiest way to add things to your curved surfaces. So this was like a 2D example here that we did. We have this single surface here. Essentially, let me delete this job. So I'm going to get rid of this job here. All right, we're going to come into Bobart and we're going to launch, create or modify our stock. I'm not really sure, so we're going to do 10 by 5. It's probably going to be in the wrong position, so we're going to say -5, and we're going to say -2.5. And what this does is this gives us like a sheet of paper. Okay, so that's step 1 is to get an embossment area. Okay, step 2 is to do an emboss from surface or solid. So essentially, we want to add some cool details to a curved surface. First thing we need to do is set out like a sheet of paper that represents the area of our part. We want to kind of extend past on all sides. Okay, our next step is to emboss from surface or solid. All right, so we're going to say use surface position. I guess I need to get it in here first. I need to select what I want to work with. Okay, and my setting for here is to use surface position. So essentially, it's going to put that model, it's going to make that embossment where that model is. Okay, so you have things like add and remove. I mean, there's my surface area probably is a little bit bigger than what I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim it back by adjusting my stock. So we're going to make this maybe 7. And we're going to make this 2. Okay. This is going to be, this one's going to be this one. Kind of just making the emboss area a little bit smaller. Okay. I'm going to regenerate this. All right, so essentially we have this embossment on this curved surface here. Okay, and what's cool about that is now we can start adding to this design. And there's a couple of ways you could do it. One way you could do it is with regular emboss features. So you come in here in a series of steps, go up and go down in order to adjust the model. I'll give you a simple example would be a regular embossment. We can give it a curve shape. Let me see, what do I like to do here? Something like this, maybe. You can adjust this. We can say whether we're adding or removing. So I'm going to say subtract. I'll use a different color for contrast. Okay. So this is the emboss model. We used our surface to give us our surface model to what we want to emboss on, right, based on our model. And then now we're creating an embossment feature. And what I'm going to do is just select a boundary to work with. So I'll select that boundary, for instance. Okay, I'm going to regenerate. And then now you can see how, I'm going to go to a new layer. I'm going to blank everything else out. Okay, so now you can see how we can put that along that surface. Now that can go down or you can have it go up, right? So we could say maybe instead of subtract, we can say add. Okay, come in and regenerate. And now you can see it's going up in Z. All right. Now, the other, sometimes, you want to have it go up higher, like kind of have like almost like a shoulder. I don't know the best way to describe it, but it's this base height right here. Basically I'm telling it, extrude up a certain amount and then put the embossment on top. So that base height, Okay, I can make that adjustment and regenerate. See how you can then move that up or down. Now you have merge high, merge low, and you can spend a lot of times developing these or not, right? But the key takeaway here is that we use the surface, we're embossing with our boundaries on that surface, and we have a lot of controls. To try to model something like this can be very difficult to do, and not really something you could do on any kind of regular basis or with efficiency, right? Like a bus. You know, these things take time to put the designs into them. You can keep them simple, they can get more complex, but one way you can do this is by adding embossments to this. Now, the big takeaway I want to leave you guys with is this emboss from component. Okay, embossing from component. And essentially, that allows you to take like an STL, flatten it, make it bigger or smaller, and put it along those surfaces or emboss it along that surface. And this is a great way to add detail to your projects. You know, again, I'm kind of running out of time here, so essentially what we would want to do is create a library of components or even purchase these STL files online. And then when you're creating your design, instead of doing the pull and tug step-by-step build from the emboss features, you can do an emboss from component. And that allows you, when you get into this, I wonder if I have let me see if I have a BS, let me see. Um, That's not the one. Let me see here. So you can save the whole Bobart surface as a BBAS file, or you can save the whole thing as an STL or a component or STL. Embossing from component, I should have one of these files here. Hold on. All right. So this is an American flag, right? This is done using Bobart. This one was actually done in BobCAM for SolidWorks. So the first thing we want to do is just make this smaller. So let's go. Let's go something like that. All right. Now we can, as far as for placement, we can move it. Let me change the color. As far as for placement, you can use these origin positions to move it back or forth in order to get it into position. The other thing you can do, so I can use the same ratio for this value, but then I can uncheck that and I can use this value to set what the Z depth is. So basically squishing it. Okay. I'm going to have it add to the model here. We'll say okay. We're going to regenerate here. And then what we're seeing is, you know, I've taken a component which happens to be the American flag, and I'm embossing it along this curved surface here. Remember, we started with a 3D surface. Maybe it would be better to show it going down in Z. So let's go ahead and edit this one. And then let's say subtract. Okay, and regenerate. So now we can see it's going down in Z instead. And again, this could be a tree or an apple or a light bulb. It happens to be the American flag. And you can use these different components and incorporate them into your design and make your art projects, your logos, and your 3D carving that much easier. Again, my name is Al DiPaolo. I am the voice of the Bobcat After Dark video series. I've done hundreds of videos on Bobcat and in general, a student of CAD and CAM. I really want to thank you all for spending some time with me here today to learn about the new Bobart features. Make sure you guys check bobcatsupport.com virtual training events for updated June, I'm sorry, our updated July calendar. Other than that, I really want to thank everybody for spending some time here today. I hope you had an amazing 4th of July. We are running some special 4th of July promotions Okay, if you're on this webinar and you're looking at adding extra seats, extra licenses, training, leveling up, renewing your support or what have you, make sure to contact your account manager today. I know there's some really good incentives, and make sure that you let them know that Al from today's webinar sent you their way. Again, our number is 877-262-2231. Make sure to mention the 4th of July promotion. Other than that, I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Our next training event is next Wednesday, and I'm pretty sure it's 4-axis standard. So I hope to see you there. If not, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much and have a great day.